Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of the novel Clarissa or The History of a Young Lady by Samuel Richardson. This is an epistolary novel and it was published in 1748. In this story, he tells the tragic story of a young woman, Clarissa Harlow, and Clarissa has a quest for virtue, though her family continuously thwarted her, doubting her virtue. The Harlows are a recently wealthy family, and in order to maintain their status in society, they are obsessed in controlling their daughter Clarissa. This novel is considered as one of the longest novels in the English language and also as Richardson's masterpiece. In the story, we find Robert Lovelace, a wealthy libertine and heir to a substantial estate, begins to court Arabella, who is Clarissa's older sister. However, Arabella rejects him because she feels slighted by his more ardent interest in her parents' approval than in having any interest in her. Lovelace quickly moves on from Arabella to Clarissa, and this causes much displeasure to Arabella and even her brother James. Clarissa insists that she dislikes Lovelace, but Arabella grows jealous of Lovelace's interest in Clarissa. James also dislikes Lovelace because they had a duel once. And these feelings combined also is increased with the resentment that the grandfather had left Clarissa a piece of land, which leads the siblings to be more aggressive towards Clarissa. Now the entire Harlow family is in favor of Clarissa marrying Roger Solomons, but Clarissa does not wish to marry him. When she says that, the family becomes suspicious of a supposed dislike of Lovelace and they believe that she loves Lovelace. The Harlows begin restricting Clarissa's contact with outside world by forbidding her to see Lovelace. Eventually, they even forbid her to either leave her room or send letters to her friend Anna. How? Until Clarissa apologizes and agrees to marry Solomons. Trapped and desperate to regain her freedom, Clarissa continues to communicate with Anna secretly and begins a correspondence with Lovelace while trying to convince her parents not to force her to marry Solomons. Her parents see this, that is a protest, as stubborn disobedience, and communication between parents and daughter breaks down. Lovelace convinces Clarissa to elope with him to avoid conflict with her parents. While they are eloping, Joseph Lehman, a servant of the Harlow family, shouts and makes noise, and the whole family wakes and discovers that Clarissa and Lovelace are about to run away. Frightened of the possible aftermath, Clarissa leaves with Lovelace but becomes his prisoner for many months. Her family now will not listen to Clarissa's desperate continued attempts to reconcile with them. Clarissa is kept at many lodgings, including unknowingly a brothel, where the women are disguised as high-class ladies by Lovelace to deceive Clarissa. Meanwhile, she continues to refuse Lovelace, longing to live by herself in peace. Lovelace thinks that virtuous women do not exist now and is desperately trying to seduce Clarissa despite declaring that he loves her. Under the pretense of saving her from a fire, Lovelace at last gains entry to Clarissa's bedroom. Under the threat of rape, she promises to forgive and marry him. However, she makes a first successful escape from Lovelace, concealing herself in lodgings in Hampshire. Enraged, like he is so angry by Clarissa's flight, Lovelace vows to seek revenge. Somehow he hunts her down to the lodgings where she is hiding and he rents all the rooms around her, effectively trapping her. He hires people to impersonate his own respectable family members to gain her trust. During this time, he intercepts a letter by Clarissa from Anna Howe, warning her of true extent of the deception and roguery. And he doesn't want her, that is Clarissa, to know that he is a rogue, so he changes the letter's contents, and he also commits forgery to put an end to the communication between Anna and Clarissa. Eventually, he persuades Clarissa to accompany his imposed relatives out in a carriage and thus carries her back to the disguised brothel. They, with the assistance of the prostitutes and brothel madam, he drugs and then rapes her. After the rape, Clarissa suffers a loss of sanity for several days, maybe because of her extreme distress as well as the dose of opiates administered to her. This temporary insanity is represented in mad letters by the use of scattered typography. When Clarissa recovers her senses, Lovelace realizes that he has failed to corrupt her. Instead, she repeatedly refuses his offers of marriage despite her situation as a fallen woman. She accuses him of deceiving and unlawfully detaining her and insists that he set her free. He continues to claim that the impersonators really were his family members and that his crime was simply one of his desperate passions to get married to her. He tries to convince her to marry him, alternating between threats and professions of marriage. She steadfastly resists and attempts several more escapes. Lovelace is forced to concede that Clara's virtue remains untarnished, but he begins to convince himself that the rape was not properly conducted. Since Clarissa was drugged at the time, she could neither consent nor refuse. He decides to attempt a second rape but without drugs. Pretending to be angered by the discovery that she has bribed a servant to help her escape, Lovelace begins to menace Clarissa, escalating to physical violence. But she threatens to kill herself with a penknife should he proceed. Terrified by her willingness to die by her virtue, Lovelace retreats. At that time, Lovelace is called away to attend his dying uncle from whom he is expecting to inherit an earldom. He orders the prostitutes to keep Clarissa confined but well treated until he returns. Clarissa escapes. However, the brothel madam is able to have her jailed for a few days for unpaid bills, and Clarissa finds sanctuary with a shopkeeper and his wife when she is released. Corresponding with Lovelace's real family, she discovers the true extent of his deception. She lives in constant fear of being found by him again as he continues to send her marriage offers through his disreputable friend John Belfort as well as through his own family members. Clarissa is determined not to accept. She becomes dangerously ill from the stress, rarely eating, convinced that she will die soon. Her illness progresses. She and Belfort become correspondents. She appoints him executor of her will as she puts all of her affairs in order to the alarm of the people around her. Belfort is amazed at the way Clarissa handles her approaching death and laments what Lovelace has done. In one of the letters he sends to Lovelace, he writes, "If the divine Clarissa asks me to slit your throat, Lovelace, I shall do it in an instant." Eventually, surrounded by strangers and her cousin Colonel Morden, Clarissa dies in the full consciousness of her virtue and trusting in a better life after death. Belfort manages Clarissa's will and ensures that all her articles and money go into the hands of the individual she desires should receive them. Lovelace departs for Europe and continues to correspond with Belfort. Lovelace learns that Colonel Morden has suggested he might seek Lovelace and demand satisfaction on behalf of his cousin. He arranges an encounter with Colonel Morden. They meet in Munich and arrange a duel. Morden is slightly injured in the duel, but Lovelace dies of his injuries the following day. Before dying, he says, "Let this expatriate." Clarissa's relatives finally realize they have been wrong, but it comes too late. They discover Clarissa has died. And here the story ends, and here a woman dies to prove her virtue and who believes that no one can corrupt her in spite of repeated attempts. It's a beautiful story by Richardson. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box. Like the video, share it with your friends. And if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe and support. Thank you.